Welcome back, friends. Today's Chaos Zero Nightmare video is all about an emergency live stream that was held by, and I might say this wrong, Kim Hyung-seok, apologies if I said that wrong, CEO of Super Creative and director of CZN, basically to address a lot of the criticisms, controversies, etc. about the game. There's a lot to go over here, so I'm going to just break it down section by section. I'll throw some gameplay up in the corner so you have something pretty to look at. And before I go too far in, I want to say thank you to ConstructionFit8822 on Reddit. I'll link the post below, but they're the ones who I saw post this up, the translations, etc. This is ahead of any official translations, from the game team themselves. So it really starts off with the director taking ownership over what they see to be core failures or criticisms and disappointments in the game. And from what I understand from the live stream, I didn't watch it personally, is they're very sorrowful and remorseful throughout the whole thing. Let's jump into these core pieces though. First being service instability and technical issues. And the key things that they noted were failures in processing payments. I did have people reach out to me and say, hey, I bought this pack on the game and it never came through, but my credit card got charged, etc. They say duplicate rewards resulting from login errors, a Korean language regression that led to critical misunderstandings, numerous hotfixes for ongoing bugs, and a new issue which we just got notices about, which is Prism module observations, which if I'm not mistaken, it's when you get to the pity, it doesn't actually give you the character that you were focusing on. And they just go to say that they're committed to working day and night to correct, these different issues. Look, it's a new live service game. I expect bugs. So it's nothing that I feel someone needs to fall on a massive sword for. I just hope they get them fixed quickly. Sounds like they're addressing them. The next piece, and this one came as a bit of a surprise how they are going to remedy this, is critical flaws in the main story narrative. It basically summarizes to a couple key points. One is that the main character feels like a side character. It doesn't feel like they're the protagonist of the story, so much as the side characters are out there building relationships with each other, really driving the narrative forward, and they call it player alienation. And so they want to make it so that the main character, the person that you're playing as, feels more central as the protagonist, not as an observer of the story. And he says that the causes of this flaw came down to rash decisions that they intended to fix later. And a lot of this was to get the game out by a certain date. So there are pieces that got rushed, and we'll talk about that here in a second, that led them to not have the, story that they wanted to launch with. They then go on to say that this is staff departures and development process issues. And so there's this whole controversy around the game's writers leaving or being asked to leave. I'm not quite sure which way that one goes. And he said that many members of the scenario team resigned last year and stated that this was why he was excessively involved in the story. And then he said that under the pressure of the deadline, he participated in writing scripts and publishing forcefully, is the term he used here. This stifled the creativity of the talented writers he had hired. And then there was ongoing instability with people that completed the main story under limited time constraints that have also since resigned. And he says it's completely his fault. It's his responsibility. So I think this is maybe some of the controversy I've heard people say in comments or on live streams lately, where there's this turmoil in the writing staff. It sounds like there's suggestions that they were mistreated or treated poorly. And he does talk about that a little bit later, but basically all this led to the story not being what they wanted it to be and not releasing as good as it could be. I will take a step back here and say I can feel that. I've started to see this story pick up in, I think, chapter 2 into chapter 3 and 4. And by the middle of chapter 5, I started skipping the whole story. It got to the point that I just wanted it to be over so I could get back to the fun gameplay. Look, if you love it, I'm not saying anything bad about liking the story, not liking the story. I just personally lost interest in it. So what's interesting, and this goes into his next point, is they have a remediation plan for this, and they are going to do a full-scale rewrite and redevelopment of the main narrative, chapters 1 through 5. So the story we know today, getting completely reworked. And they said that they are going to fundamentally recenter this on the captain being the protagonist of this world. There's going to be centrality around the character. There's going to be revisions around a lot of the different characters themselves. They're going to change the atmosphere to be more dark. desolate in tone, which is, how they kind of pitch the game, this gothic kind of setting, and really bring in the narrative weight and psychological depth that the game wants. And this is going to have new voice recordings, not just text changes. And this will be in the first half of next year. So if you want to see the story as is, feel free. If you want to skip it, feel free, whatever. But they're going to completely redo the whole thing within the first half of 2026. So pretty significant change there. And by the way, there's going to be some compensation around some of this stuff too. So stay tuned. I'll tell you about that in a bit here. Compensation and service stabilization. It was the next point. So as an apology, in November, they're going to give you 10 pickup anchors. This is the limited currency each week of November. So that's 40 of the premium polls that we'll get throughout the course of all of November. So make sure you log in and pick those up. And he says that this is the price that they must bear for their responsibilities in these errors. So he feels like the loss in compensation to the company is necessary, as an apology. Good on him. I don't know that they had to do any apology, but, I think this shows some of the care and some of the remorse here. Localization and translation improvements. So I think we've all felt this. Either translations are inconsistent, or a card will say one thing on one screen, a different thing on another. Or my personal favorite is I still get text that isn't even translated here and there, or you get these strings from coding sometimes. And so basically the short end is they're just going to keep fixing this. We don't have to get too far into it. They're just going to keep going through it and making sure it's better. Adjustments to gameplay and monetization. So they bring out specifically character affinity and how hard it is to level up your affinities because there's not enough gifts. And so they're going to make major updates to that. Right now, I'm basically just focusing everything into Hugo to get him to level 15 for the book. And everyone else is just, if they get it, they get it. Business model addressing complaints about monetization. So they did bring this up. He says that the cost to acquire a character is about 30% cheaper than other games like Genshin Impact. The absence of limited characters allows players more relaxed long-term approaches to collection. He is committed to providing more in-game currency to make acquisition easier. And what he means, if you don't know, is when a character leaves the limited time banner, like we have Haru right now, they will move to the standard banner. So they don't disappear until some future rerun. They'll go into standard. Not saying there won't be reruns, but there's another way to acquire them. And you can also get them from shops and things like that. And it's interesting that they call that it's 30% cheaper than Genshin Impact or games of the like. Obviously, they're going to look at their market competition and the gacha, space as a whole. I kind of like it when a game finds its own way to monetize. But look, it's the gacha space. We know how this works. I've been in this mode of games for over 10 years now. It's not surprising. Okay, next up is response to community allegations and concerns. So first is the coupling controversy and player alienation. So I guess this has to do with, relationships between non-protagonist characters. Apparently in some places this is a big deal. I never even noticed it. I guess I just wasn't focused on, who's shipping with who. But apparently this is something that they want to focus on and I guess fix. Then they have the scenario team's resignation and internal politics. So this is the whole, did people get forced out? Did people get mistreated? The allegation is community speculated internal company politics were the cause for team's departure. And the director firmly denied this rumor. He said that the resignations were of his own actions as a result of, and the high intensity push for development and his demand for nearly 4 or 5 rewrites of the scenario. He takes full responsibility. Look, I'm not going to speculate one way or another on these things. That's something we'll never know. Stance on ideological controversies, Femi issue. I don't know what that is. So certain in-game content led to community suspicion game was promoting specific feminist ideologies. Oh, that's what the Femi issue is. So basically he's saying that there is no specific ideology that they're trying to push here. Again, I honestly, going through the story, never sat back and said this feels like it's being a feminist narrative of any sort or feminist ideology narratives. I just took it as people are going through the game, getting trauma, trying to figure out the chaos. Maybe I'm old and just missed it and it went over my head. Who knows? And then he denies AI generate content. We have to dive into that one. Director's personal appeal and commitment. So the rest of this is basically he is going to take full responsibility. And if you have issues with the game, blame him, don't blame his team. And they're, committed to future transparency. They're going to, he's going to never run away. He's going to correct the wrongs, make things better. And he really just wants people to enjoy the game. So overall, my thoughts on this, and take this for what you will, you'll have your own thoughts, is it does seem like they're listening. It does seem like they acknowledge that there's problems. They definitely want to rework certain things. And I like that they've been transparent. I like that they're sitting back here and saying, hey, yeah, we rushed certain things and we had issues with the team, with these turnovers that, the director's taking responsibility for, and they want to make it better. They're going to rewrite the story. And obviously this is just the step one. There's going to be other things that I'm sure that they will do over time, but they know the issues. They're not ignoring the issues. And it looks very much like they're going to push forward and make what I think is already a great game that much better. And yes, I know you saw my last video. I had a criticism. Everyone has criticisms on things. It's fine. Doesn't mean I don't love the game and I don't want to keep playing it. So I'm happy to see that this was addressed. Again, we're getting 40 total pulls throughout the course of November. So keep an eye on your in-game mail for that. I assume it will come in there. And my friends, until our next video or live stream, please take care of yourselves.